Now, let's get some perspective to these. It's interesting that the Electoral Act has been signed on a day as this, and interesting thing is that INEC has not been able to release the schedule of activities for the election due to perhaps they're waiting for the law to be signed. Now that that has happened, but let's look at some of the issues that are being raised. I'm being joined now by Senator Okejev, a federal lawmaker representing Benue Northwest in the National Assembly. He's here with me in our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, Senator, for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Sheldon.
And virtually, we have Senator Ajibola Basiru. He's one of those who participated actively in the process of putting the bill together. He's in Oshogbo. He joins us virtually. Thank you so much, Senator, for coming on tonight. Let me get your party, the PDP, has been very critical of the president on the issue of the passage of the Electoral Act. Now that it's been passed, let me get your view on what the president said and how this whole thing panned out.
Well, I join others to congratulate the president for bowing to pressure and signing this bill. He needn't have come to this pass. This is something he should have done, because when the president vetoed the bill last year in December, he brought the reasons why he vetoed the bill. It had to do with, according to him, the restrictive nature of the party primaries, which was restricted to direct primaries. And that was sorted out by the National Assembly. And so we were wondering why it was taking quite some time and getting the nation agitated before he came out to sign today. But he has signed, like you said, and others too said, this is a monumental development in our political development for the president to have signed this. So what I'm wondering is, when the president vetoed the bill last year, did the impulse that he got from the relevant persons that he referred to, did they not point out this section 84 that he is talking about today? You know, it has always been there. It wasn't something that was just fixed by the National Assembly after he returned the bill. It was there. And so it reminds me of what happened in the 8th Assembly when the president rejected this bill once, twice, thrice. The last time he gave the reason that it was too close to an election. So the impression I have is that he would latch at anything not to sign the bill. But now that he has signed it, it is to his glory and the glory of, all of us, that in the quest of our political development, we are taking the right steps. You know, after each election, certain things are noticed in the way the electoral process, panned out. And because of that, we seek to make it a better document. It can never be perfect. And so that which he has highlighted will be looked at. But personally, I'm not one of those who believe that Section 84 contradicts the Constitution. I'm a lawyer, but I have my own different opinion. Okay? What is the mischief that this section seeks to cure? You had a situation in the past where parties will say that, oh, all the aides of the president are automatic delegates. And then, and that person, either the governor, you've had a case in the past in this country that the governor had more than 1,000 aides. And then you make all of them automatic delegates. And so automatically you are putting him, giving him a head start over his competitors, over his rivals, fellow contenders for a particular office. So that for me is part of what that the mischief that was sought to be cured. Yeah. Okay, so they are citing Section 40 and Section 42. Section 40 talks about freedom of association. Section 2 talks about freedom from discrimination. And I think, in my opinion, it's stretching it too far to say that, oh, because let's give an example. You want to join a club. There are rules and regulations. You can't say because you are a Nigerian citizen and Section 40 says you have freedom of association, you go and badge into any association. You have to follow the rules and regulations, okay? And it has to be done in such a way as to give fairness to everybody, a level playing field.
So you don't think that it's ultra-vires? You don't think that it's against the Constitution?
No, personally, I hold a different view. I don't believe so.
Let me, interestingly, your colleague is also a lawyer. Let me ask
who also served on the
committee.
On the committee.
Yeah. So, but the senator is always very proud to say that he holds a PhD in law. Senator Basiru, do you agree with your colleague over the contention that the president raised on Section 84, subsection 12?
Shehu, I think you have this issue with this my PhD in law. I think it's not about being proud. That is reality, of the fact and cannot be wished away. On a very serious note, I think I would say that I'm very happy that Mr. President assented to the Electoral Act, and we have an act before us that is going to be very impactful in a positive manner towards electoral system in Nigeria. And I would say that it's also good that the president, notwithstanding the reservation he had about Section 84.12, decided to append his signature to the bill to make it law, and then raise issue about what to be done by Section 84, subsection 12. Clearly, Section 84.12 has two subsections. A subsection has to do with a provision barring political appointee from involvement in a convention as being that they are going to be elected in such convention. The implication of that is that in that regard, a person who seeks a political office would not be allowed to do so unless he should have resigned from his office. The second aspect is whether such people, even though they are not delegates in that election, they would
Okay, it does look like there's some technical issue with the
connection.
Okay,
I think I'm back.
Senator,
I think I'm back.
There was some kind of glitch earlier on, but you can go ahead.
I think, yeah, what I was saying, what I'm saying is that there are two areas to it. One, whether somebody who is an appointee can participate as a candidate in the convention, and whether he can vote for another candidate in the convention. The position of the law in this regard, I will say, the position of Mr. President, based on existing case law, specifically Shinkafi and Yari, and the case of Akeredolu and INEC, it appears that where a person is qualified by the provision of the Constitution, it cannot be otherwise disqualified under the provision of any other law. Because according to the Supreme Court in those cases, the provision of qualification for political offices are exhaustive, and any other provision seeking to deal with that will to that extent be unconstitutional. But as regards non-elective persons and people who are appointed to be delegates, I don't think that would be correct to say it will be unconstitutional. And just as
Okay, so let's look at this argument. We might drag it for a while because I like to bring out a few issues, but let's look at the positive side.
Yes.
Some of the areas that this law let's highlight those areas that this law will help to empower our electoral process. For you, what gives you joy in this new law as in relation to our elections?
Well, in the process of coming up with this law, you recall that one of the most contentious issues that came up on the floor of the Senate, and I believe in the House too, was the issue of electronic transmission of results. Because it's at the core of a free and fair process of election. You know, I thank God
that divided you and your colleagues.
Some divided, of your colleagues. Yeah, for
the House was turned into a rowdy session.
Yes, in my 15-year stay at the National Assembly, that was one of the few times that each member was called upon to stand up and answer his father's name.
And that was the minority leader's motion exactly. That it should be called into a vote.
It should be called to, you should divide the House, and everybody, Nigerians knew who voted for what. But I thank God that the pressure from the public, yielded a positive result, because at the end of the day, even those that voted against it came around to agreeing that that was a critical element.
Do you think that moment put a question mark on I wouldn't want to use the word integrity, but did he put a question mark on the stand of the Senate? Senate, I'm saying not National Assembly, the Senate, because the House had their own issues, but the Senate, because at the end of the day, the Senate made a U-turn on that matter. Did you think that was a major challenge, a question mark on the Senate?
Sure. The beauty of democracy is that, one, we are representatives of the people. Now, we don't have to, on every issue, go back to the people and ask for permission before we come and vote, because the presumption is that they give us the mandate to, on their behalf, take certain decisions. But if in the process of taking decisions, it becomes very loud and clear that the decision we are about to take is against the interests of the people, or they reject such decisions, I mean, I don't think it's lacking integrity to come around to agreeing with what the people, because it was very clear if you listen to people on the radio, in the televisions and on the social media, it was very clear that the people wanted electronic transmission of results. So,
but it does also look at the time that it was a division along party lines.
Yes.
Most of your colleagues in the PDP voted for, and it does look like a large number of members in the Senate in the APC voted against.
Including the chairman of the committee. Okay, so, but let me say that is how democracy works. Even the American system that we copy, they try to toe party line in most instances. They try to toe party instances. But what I'm saying is that at least we thank God that they saw the national interest over and above their party. After they voted party line, they saw that the whole nation was united, that in order to have a free and fair election, a process that is free and fair and acceptable to Nigerians, that was the way to go. So, they could have, because of ego problems, stuck to their position, but they never did. So, for me, they should be applauded rather than see it any other way.
It's interesting. Let me allow Senator Bashiru to, because he's a member of the APC. And also on that day, if you remember, those who are absent, it was obvious, and some constituent members who were saying, so my senator was absent. It was not when there was a very critical and a very important vote, my senator was absent. So we knew the senators that were absent, we knew the ones that were present.
In all fairness, just quickly, in all fairness, our work is such that we don't do it just in chamber. Sometimes you are doing oversight, sometimes you are doing
the question is that sometimes your chambers are sometimes empty. Yeah. And it gives an impression to the public, to those who voted them into office, that look, our lawmakers are not present. And it's difficult to explain that you are somewhere, especially on a day as critical as that. But let me allow Senator Bashiru to weigh in. For you, Senator, what gladdens your heart in respect of this law and how it can further or give strength to our elections?
I think the first aspect of it is the recognition of the use of technology. As you know now, for purpose of accreditation, identification and accreditation of voters, the smart card reader is recognized, and any other technological device, which means that any other technology that may come for purpose of aid and verification of voters is going to be allowed under the Electoral. This is salutary and will aid our process of transparency in our election. Similarly, the question of transmission of election results after it has been announced at the polling unit will allow for seamless collation and ease of being able to know and determine the election result in a timeous manner. Another significant aspect is the amendment of the grounds of election petition. Hitherto, we see a situation whereby election properly conducted are challenged by some political parties who would not even have any showing at that election by saying that they were excluded from that election. Now, you cannot bring a grant of exclusion to be a basis to nullify an election. On the contrary, you are allowed to come and inspect the ballot paper a period of time before the election, so that if you don't raise any objection, you cannot seek to nullify a properly conducted election on the ground of exclusion of a candidate. Another salutary provision under the Electoral Act is the recognition of accreditation as the basis for determining overvoting. Under the previous 2011 Act, the overvoting is reckoned by regard to the number of voters on the register. The implication of this is that there is always residual number of voters, so it becomes very difficult to really determine overvoting. But now, the number of accredited voters will be what will be used to reckon whether there is overvoting. And the recognition of this will imply that when there's overvoting at any particular polling unit, then the election will be nullified. Another important aspect is also the question of election results that have been declared under duress. This now allows the Independent Electoral Commission to nullify that election without waiting to go to electoral tribunal to be able to do so. Then the recognition of the right of the fiscally challenged is also very important because it allows fiscally challenged people to have access to voters' register.
Let's wrap up this conversation now. I know the likes of Senator Smart Adeyemi will be very happy because he was one of those who stood first against the issue of direct primary. Now, not only that we have direct and indirect, we now have consensus. In the new law. Let's wrap up, and we just have a few seconds to do that. Yeah. For those, I know you are one of those who said that there must be multiplicity of the mode of primary elections. Yeah. But what does this mean for political party organization?
Yeah, I think that's the whole idea of democracy. You open up the space. Initially, the idea of consensus was nebulous, was neither here nor there because people didn't know what people felt that it would play into the hands of those that wanted to control matters. But now it has been specified. And it's not something that you force on somebody. A party could decide that we want direct primaries or we want indirect primaries. But first, you can give, you can try the consensus approach. Option. If it doesn't work, well, you go to some of those. So
we can say consensus is the creation of President Buhari because he was one who muted it at the Channels television interview.
Okay, yeah.
He said, well, consensus, he was saying the third option.
Yes.
But, I mean, I wish that we can continue, but it's a conversation that will keep going on and on. I would have loved to come back to you, but we are totally out of time. Senator Basiru, if you can do this in 20 seconds, your final thought and your parting shot on this matter.
I think no matter how beautiful the electoral bill is, we need to change our political culture. We should respect the will and aspiration of the people. We should abide by the rules of the game and ensure that the vote of our people counts. So there's a need for democratic culture to be interposed into whatever provision we have in the Electoral Act.
All right. Thank you so much, distinguished Senator Ajibara Basiru. I must congratulate you and your colleagues for a very difficult one. We'll put you guys under pressure, but I think it was in the best interest of Nigerians to get this job done. Rid it of the errors, remove all the issues, and now we have a brand new law for our elections. Thank you so much, and congratulations. Thank you so much, Senator Akechev. But one thing I know that will be also very important for our election is the Election Offences Commission.
Exactly.
If that happens, it will be a lot of help. I want to appeal to you and your colleagues to make that happen too.
I agree.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.